Okay, so as we know, we have a governor's race this year in the state of Oregon, and there's several candidates vying to be our new governor. And the first one that has decided to come on and talk to us here at Greater Idaho is Danielle Bethel. So Danielle, thank you for joining us. Just real briefly, introduce yourself, who you are, why you want to be governor, and then I've got a few questions for you.
Okay, so I'm a Marion County Commissioner, 2 terms, so I'm in my 6th year. Marion County encompasses a good swath of the Willamette Valley. I live in the Santiam Canyon, so I live in a rural community. I was born and raised in East Salem, but my husband was born and raised in outside of Staten, and so we moved home to his neighborhood, farm neighborhood, I guess, in 2022, and we've lived out here since. I'm a fifth generation Oregonian. I was born in New Zealand, and I'm a different kind of candidate. I'm not the career politician that's seeking higher office because I really want the title. I'm running for governor because I um, have experienced this state's decline since I was a child. I remember the days where neighborhood parties happened frequently, and there was a lot more joy amongst Oregonians. Families, small families specifically, were thriving. There was a lot more church involvement in our communities, um, and all that is gone to the wayside because we have such a political driven, ideological, left leaning leadership at the state level. When I became a county commissioner in 2021, I recognized very quickly the despair that's happening across Oregon. I quickly became friendly with all the commissioners in all 36 counties across the state, and I would say I kind of entered into the space eyes wide open and unaware. The people that live along the I-5 corridor, at least from Lane County to Multnomah County, don't really have a front row seat to the real significant challenges that are happening in rural and frontier counties across the state. I learned a lot about my own county in that first year, being equally urban and equally rural, and the challenges that we face in the rural communities in Marion County are similar. Not as extreme, but similar to what are happening in Eastern Oregon, Southern Oregon, and the coastal range. And I work hard to bring people together. I ran for leadership for the county association. It's called the Association of Oregon Counties in 2021 and won that seat and was able to bring commissioners together. I would say bring those rural commissioners into the urban space so they could present their case and help urban commissioners and urban communities understand why there's a frustration with state leadership. And in 2024, it became evident to me that we don't have any kind of a leader running for office or in higher office at the state level or in the legislature that understands these issues the way that I understand them, and also have the level of grit that I have to come to the conversation wherever it is and fight for what's right. So I run a government now, the fifth largest in the state, very successfully. I'm a seated Republican in a very purple county. I would say my electable space is greater than the average Republican because of my childhood upbringing, the way I was raised, and really how I do my job today.
Yeah, so our goal for this, series of interviews that we're doing with the governor's candidates and Eastern Oregon, we make up the greater Idaho counties that we represent that have voted on our measures. They make up about 10% of the population of Oregon.
Yeah.
So, we are a minority in our own state. And as we've seen over the years, our political power, our political voice has gotten smaller and smaller in Eastern Oregon, and our way of life has really become under attack. So the people of Eastern Oregon, I think, to a great extent, feel like our way of life is under attack. Whether that was Measure 114, whether that was Measure 110, or now we have IP 28, you have these measures, these statewide ballot measures, this statewide governance that starts in the Willamette Valley or in the Portland metro area, usually,
Yeah, right.
that gets forced into our communities, and we really have no power to stop that. Every person in Eastern Oregon could vote against something,
Yeah,
and we couldn't overcome the voters in Multnomah
right,
County alone. So,
right.
how, as governor, knowing you've got all these counties and we make up a huge footprint. So the land mass of Eastern Oregon would be the 20th biggest state in the country if it was
Right.
just Eastern Oregon. So we are a large land mass with a very specific culture and politics and way of life, but our way of life is under attack from people on the west side of the mountains. Whether the people on the
Yeah.
west side of the mountains understand that or not, that's how the people in Eastern Oregon feel. How would you, as governor, protect the minority population that's out in Eastern Oregon that keeps getting these policies forced into our communities?
Yeah, well, the first and obvious answer to this question is you veto any bill that comes across the governor's desk that's just ridiculous. And every bill that and initiative that you've just referred to is ridiculous. I'm the only candidate in this race that's donated to the Measure 114 lawsuit. I'm a huge two-way advocate. I hunt, my family hunts. We're very involved in Eastern Oregon, actually, a few seasons a year. And I would tell you that during this season of my life as governor, I've spent more time in Eastern Oregon than I anticipated, and probably will live there someday. That
It's a
aside,
wonderful place. You won't regret it. Yes.
yeah, well, I'm actually headed out Wednesday to Southern Oregon, and then I'll be in Klamath and Lakeview at the end of the week. And I'll tell you, Lake County is probably my favorite. Hope nobody's insulted by that, but it is a beautiful, beautiful county. That aside, the governor has a unique opportunity to provide education to Oregonians from the bully pulpit. The things that we hear from our governors in my lifetime are specific to their ideological agenda. So we hear from our current governor about climate change and equity and social justice and the things that are important to her. She was elected by Portland Oregonians, and that is the agenda that they share. I think where she goes wrong and where Kate Brown went wrong and where Kitzhaber and Kolongoski also went wrong is that they didn't use that stage that's offered to them to educate people. And they weren't as educated as they should have been. An example of that I'm totally aware of because I've talked to the governor about this particular issue is the Klamath Basin and the water issues that are happening in the southeast part of the state. I went down a few months ago and spent several hours with the water users in that area and got an education that is like none other. I have heard lots of different noise in the space around water for Eastern Oregon, whether it's non-irrigated crops in the north or irrigated crops or ranches that are struggling because of the fight with the tribes. It's not just a fight with the tribes; it's a fight with what I would consider an ideological position. There's these people who believe that climate change is real, and I do believe that the climate changes every day. I don't believe that we're stuck in some kind of an abyss that's going to ruin our world the same way our current governor feels. But you have to use that stage to educate Oregonians, and then you have to put initiatives in place so that way they have to learn about it and be aware of it. One of the things that I have become accustomed to is talking to people who have different views than myself and try to understand the origin of their view. I've talked to a lot of people in Multnomah County, not just in this race, but as a county commissioner, to try to get a pulse on what it is that's important to them and why they're so uninformed when it comes to issues statewide. And I'll tell you, Oregonians are barely surviving. It doesn't matter what jurisdiction you're in this state. People are oppressed. Their rights are being robbed of them. Their ability to afford a life that they can enjoy is being robbed of them. And so everyone's living like in the very front and center present of their own reality. And they could care less what's happening to their neighbors, whether it's in their community or across the state. And we just have to change that. We have to help people understand that what they don't know is their responsibility to know. And if they want Oregon to be a thriving state that they dream of, they have to participate in that by voting differently and making sure that we don't pass initiatives like IP 28. Because I'll tell you, the reactionary effect to something like that would be hostile, especially in the urban area, which is known to be one of the best eating scenes in the Northwest. When you take away their beef and their chicken and their fish, no one's coming to Portland, and they don't really understand that. While I don't think that initiative will pass, I know it has gained momentum. I think it's ridiculous that we even have to be in a position to talk about things like this because somebody who has some funding from some out-of-state source is bringing it into a vulnerable space. Oregon is like the guinea pig state of America. And I'm frankly sick of it. It's because we have poor leadership, because we don't have a leader that's willing to stand up and shield Oregonians, Eastern Oregon, Southern Oregon, the Willamette Valley from this nonsense. And we need a fighter in that space. We need somebody that's just going to come in and start swinging. And I'll tell you, that's me. Like I am so frustrated at the things that I'm interacting with in this campaign, um, and kind of the entitlement that comes with running for governor. It just it's not really something that I'm accustomed to as a person. It is in political office, but it's time for us to set kind of that entitlement establishment aside and just really have big, hard conversations. And
Well, so you brought something up, Danielle, that was leads into my next question, and
yeah,
that is this idea that the Portland metro area, Multnomah County, Multnomah County alone is 850,000 people that vote 75% Democrat. Eastern
yeah,
Oregon is the polar opposite. Most conservative people in the state, 400,000 people that vote 75% Republican. So you have this just incredible diversity of thought and culture within our own state. Do you believe it's possible to govern a state that has that polarized of
yeah,
cultures and politics as one unit?
absolutely. I do. I think it's not going to be easy. I think it's not going to be for the light heart, and I think it's not for the somebody who thinks they're just going to walk in and hire a bunch of staff and do something, through their staff. It's going to take a leader that is going to have to be very present and own the space, and and force people into a reality that is truly existing for many of us. I'm facing water issues on my own farm right now because we're fighting a drawdown from the Army Corps. I don't have anybody in Congress that's really standing up for me on the Senate side. I don't have a governor that's actively engaging in that. The truth is that I think it's easy for Portland to just vote a way that's safe for them because the devil is who you know best, especially when you're comfortable in that environment. We have an opportunity with a candidate like myself that grew up in poverty and experienced a lot of the things that Democrats say that they're compassionate about and wanting to create difference for. I can talk into that space in the Portland environment. Every time I go up to Portland and have a conversation with people, whether they're in poverty or they're millionaires, they respond differently to me than they do other candidates because I don't have anything to lose in this other than this race. And the truth that I speak is alarming to them. I just spoke at an event on Saturday with the other four candidates that we talked about earlier. And folks were coming up and saying, wow, I've never heard anybody talk like you. And it's not that I'm necessarily saying anything different. I think it's just the way I deliver it. And I confront people. I confront them for the choices that they're making and for the ignorance that they possess, and offer them an opportunity to rise to the occasion of being a better person and get more information because I think we all have the duty to do that as American citizens, especially in a state that's failing. Um, but I do believe that you can have a leader in office. I think you can have a Republican in office that can bring both sides of the aisle on both extremes together. Um, I'm not afraid to have a frank debate and or get into a healthy argument with somebody that thinks that they know right. I'm always offering them the stage and the opportunity to run. Anybody can still fill out the application to run for governor, which the field's already pretty stacked, but come on, let's get it done, kind of a thing. And I think that there's respect gaining on my campaign for someone like me who will enter into the space and frankly just talk back.
Well, I think that so when you talk about and I promised you this would only be 15, 20 minutes. So you are very busy and you got a lot going on and campaigning across the state. So I want to keep to what I said. I do think that for people that live out in Eastern Oregon, that maybe, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think that maybe their answer to that last question is different. They look at Portland and they say, we will never, like the kinds of things that I want my governor to do and implement will never be accepted by Portland. And unlike Eastern Oregon, Portland would probably riot, like if you tried to force some of these things on them. And so naturally then when people are, come to the conclusion that we're just too different. Like what I want for my community, they don't want. And if I try to force it on them, there's going to be conflict. They try to force it on me, there's going to be conflict. That's how people have ended up where we're at, where most Eastern Oregonians are at, where they've voted to just separate from the west side of the state and join a state that's far more like us in every way. Do you believe that people should have a right to change their state governance? Do you think people, if they vote to separate from the current state they're in, should have the right to join another state if that state's willing to take them?
Sure, I do. I think that this is America, and I think the concept of freedom allows us the flexibility to navigate those spaces. But I do believe that while it's true that right now in the space that we thrive in, which is failure in this state, regardless of the corner of Oregon that you're in, your community is failing. Um, we have to accept the differences that we possess. I mean, it's just true. Like, I am not the same as people who were born and raised in Eastern Oregon because I didn't grow up in that culture, but I appreciate it and value it and enjoy it very much. I believe that there are people in Eastern Oregon that had the same feelings for Western Oregon, at least the I-5 corridor and Portland. I mean, I went to an event, uh, I want to say in the fall, early fall, where Umatilla, when it was present in Pioneer Square, and it was, bringing rural to urban, and it was a great event um, for people to be exposed to kind of agriculture, if you will. And I think it's even more true, though, Matt, that we govern from the local communities, not a statewide position. The fact that the government in Oregon is such a top-down system, everything's a statewide ballot initiative, everything is this, at the state level is where we're going wrong. You Oregonians have more access to your city councilors and your governors, and in Eastern Oregon, because there's so few of them, your state reps, but not the same because their districts are so large, you have access to your local leaders. If there's a will of the people at the local level, and it affects them locally, the majority rules right at the local level. But we don't have that opportunity right now because we don't have a governor who will govern from the bottom up instead of the top down, with relationships from the city council to the county commissioners in those local regions. Measure 114 might be important to people in Portland very differently than it is to people in Lane County. There was a commissioner relationship that occurred in 2023, where we had an Eastern Oregon commissioner and a Multnomah County commissioner. It was a Union County commissioner specifically, and a Multnomah County commissioner that shared time together on what we call a commissioner exchange. And we brought that Multnomah County commissioner to an Eastern Oregon county and exposed them to ranch life and exposed them to firearms and exposed them to livestock over a period of a few days. And when she got done, she openly admitted to the large masses of our commission space that she was afraid of the reality she lives in. She lives on MLK Boulevard in Portland, where there's massive death at the end of a firearm. Her direct exposure to firearms is all fear and all terrible towards humanity. She admitted that there's a different way of life when it comes to people who live in rural and frontier communities, and she could see how the positions that she's held her entire life are undermining and harmful to those communities. We then took that Union County commissioner into Multnomah County and essentially left him there for 4 days. And his experience openly was very shocked. He was unaware of the amount of crime and harm. You hear it in the news, but until you experience it firsthand, it's hard to relate to it. I can tell you, I've been on the receiving end of bullets in my community because of gang violence and growing up the way I grew up. And it is terrifying knowing that there are people in this state who are intending to harm, have access to tools that could harm to death permanently. Do we need to do something about that behavior? Yes. Could we do something about that behavior in Lane or Marion or Multnomah County the same as we would do it over in Union, Umatilla, or Lake? No. Local government matters. We have to govern from the local space. And if there is an unruly group that isn't the majority, you talked about how Portland might riot. That is such a small percentage of humans in the Portland market that do that, and they are left uncontrolled. That's because we have a failed leadership at the state level and we have failed leadership at the local level. And when you have a governor willing to stand up to those leaders and say, this is unacceptable, I will not tolerate this behavior in Oregon, you have a right, of course, the freedom of speech under the First Amendment, but you do not have a right to harm through that amendment. You gain compromise and you gain an understanding and awareness that we have balance. Right now, we are so imbalanced because we don't have somebody willing to introduce the concepts of reality from each jurisdiction to one another and find just a way to live cohesively together in Oregon, because they just don't care. It's not going to be easy, but I think it can be done. I feel very good about the possibility of us existing together in this state. But if Eastern Oregon, I mean, there's 17 counties, the last I heard, that had passed, I don't know, it's not an ordinance because that comes from your local leaders, like an initiative, like a referendum or something that
Yeah,
said, hey,
so
there's a
it's 13. There's 17 counties or partial counties that we think would be a good fit to join Idaho. 13 have passed measures, ballot measures that were put citizen-led ballot measures or commissioner referred. And I want to make sure our audience knows too, Danielle. So when you announced for governor last summer, right away you reached out to our organization and we met and talked for had lunch and talked for quite a while and I think that you're the only candidate so far that has done that and I think that our supporters deserve to know that because we're a small number and we're a long way away from where the power centers in this state are and it's very easy to ignore us. It's very easy to just throw nice words about how much you care about out here, but then never actually come talk to us or say what do I need to do to get you folks that are so frustrated with our state you're voting to separate. So I know I personally appreciate that. I know that our supporters will appreciate that. And I think that says a lot about your desire to keep Eastern Oregon as part of the state as a whole. But I'm going to give you the last word and the last chance here. You said you do support. There are 13 counties out here who have voted and said we'd rather be part of Idaho than part of Oregon. So you become governor, and the people of Eastern Oregon are very conservative. They're going to vote for a conservative, our desire is to see this state get more conservative. I think most of us have come to the conclusion that that's just not going to happen, but it doesn't mean it doesn't mean we're going to stop trying and it's not like we're going to
right.
stop voting. We're going to keep voting. So you become governor. What are you going to do with us? What do you have to offer us, those of us that have said we would like to separate, join Idaho, but our current governor and our current legislature has held us back? What's Governor Danielle Bethel bring to the table for us?
I think you just convene the conversation. I mean, first of all, I appreciate that you sharing that I've come over and talked to you, and I've been in the communities over there quite a bit. I know what it is to be ignored, literally in Marion County, where the capital and the governor reside, and it is infuriating. Selfishly, I would love Oregon to stay Oregon so that way I don't have to pay out of state tag prices to go hunting over there if you become Idaho, because that's very costly. But at the end of the day, you just convene the conversation and allow Oregonians to have a say to make their case. I think what's missing is that front and center presence of people saying, hey, this doesn't work for me and we want a divorce. And what does that divorce look like? And make it very public and make people in the West understand that they are harming a good section of our state and kind of compel. I mean, the governor can't make the legislature do anything per se, but the governor can compel with that bully pulpit the opportunity for that conversation to be very high and very present. And let's talk to Idaho. I've actually talked to a couple of state reps over there. I was just back in DC talking to some county commissioners, and there's kind of I'm going to say a running joke, but when I hang out with commissioners from Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, they're like, hey, how soon are you going to give us, like oceanfront property? Because they recognize that we have this large urban frontier space that's very unhappy. And some of them are pro the idea and some of them are opposed to the idea because they don't want anybody that is any more liberal than what they're dealing with in Boise coming anywhere near their state capital, right? Like they are like
True.
hands off. We don't need more drama. We need less population. So it would be a very big conversation. And how do you do it? I know what the process is. You actually provided me some information that I went and chased down after our lunch to understand how a state line can be moved. Because I had said to you, boy, I know it's going to be hard. We can't even get time change figured out in the West. But it can be done. And I don't want it to be done though. I'm going to be totally open. I will support anybody in their reality and I will make that opportunity available to them. But I'm also going to fight like hell to make sure that Eastern Oregon is represented, not just in the governor's office, but on the I-5 corridor. And people are gaining an education that I think is more valuable than a state line being moved. I truly believe, and I may have told you this, When I became a county commissioner, that was when I first became really exposed to Oregon. I had the opportunity to travel to all the counties and be spend time in those regions. Previous to being a commissioner, that wasn't available to me. And also, I didn't know how to do it. I grew up in poverty. If I could walk there, I got there because I grew up in a homeless space. And my education of this state has, I don't even know, like the amounts of knowledge that I have gained just in the 6 years has been such a joy. It's my duty to share that with other people that have lacked the exposure and the access. I truly believe that the reason people make decisions, whether it's about these particular issues, whether it's gun issues or abortion or land rights or whatever, it's about their own direct exposure and mostly their lack of awareness, exposure, and understanding to those circumstances and issues. And while I won't always be able to be effective in reaching all 4.2 million people, I will give it my damnedest to make sure that people understand the realities of life in all four corners and across this state because I love Oregon deeply and I am so blessed to be where I am, to be able to give an opportunity to voice to others, that I'll die doing it. So I want to represent Eastern Oregon better than anybody ever has. And I tell you, I think there are commissioners that would attest to that because I chase them to the microphone to talk about their issues for them when I get the opportunity. And so I'm just going to give it my all. And regardless of winning in this race, and I do hope people show up and look into me and support me, I'm not going away.
Danielle, thank you for joining us and taking our questions and addressing the people of Eastern Oregon directly. We will certainly be following you. Good luck and thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you.